All right, prime time. All right, thank you all for joining us. And again, put your questions into the chat. If it's a really complicated question, just say, "Hey, I've got a question." Um, Let me interrupt at some point. We'd rather take care of questions at the time rather than at the end. So feel free to put your questions in. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. There we go. Okay, just a bit about Pilot. So we were founded in 2008. We're 17th birthday is coming up here very soon. We got into healthcare marketing in 2009 when we were contacted by Advocate Healthcare. For any of you who are in Chicago, you know that Advocate is one of the big players in the Chicago market. And we have been working with Advocate as PPC and doing SEO for them since 2009. They are still a client. We're very lucky that Advocate people get poached a lot. And we get a call out of the blue saying, "Hey, that stuff you were doing for Advocate, I'm now at this other hospital. Can you do that for us?" So we've developed a pretty big healthcare division or vertical. And then this is all public news, so I'm not spilling the beans or anything. It's you can find it all over the web. Advocate was sued for $12.5 million for having a Facebook pixel on their website. And that got our attention, of course. We weren't doing analytics. We didn't cause the problem. But then our smaller healthcare clients started coming in and saying, you know, we want you to take down all marketing pixels and all analytics off our website. And that really got us interested in this because we manage millions of dollars worth of ads in the healthcare world. And we didn't want to fly blind trying to manage those. So that is kind of how, as we started to explore what options do people have, do our clients have, we found there's a couple of really good options out there, Fresh Paint and Ours Privacy, but they're insanely expensive and they only work with enterprise hospitals. Ours will go down to like a medium-sized hospital, but and we couldn't figure. So we looked at their solutions and we figured out we could do it ourselves. It's taken over a year to get everything in place. It was not a small undertaking, but we now have our own solution. That is, if you're familiar with Fresh Paint and Ours, our solution uses the exact same technologies that they do. So we'll be talking more about that. But that's how we got into this, and why we are in the HIPAA world. I will differentiate. Unlike Fresh Paint and Ours, they are both software companies, and we're marketers and we're healthcare marketers, and that's why we're in this business. Okay. So making a quick case, is it important to have your website HIPAA compliant? So I'm assuming most of you, all of you are probably HIPAA compliant. You probably had to take HIPAA training, and you know you're healthcare marketers and you know that compliance is important. It protects patient privacy, it maintains patient trust, and it forces institutions to harden their digital infrastructure, making sure that stuff cannot get, that PHI and PII cannot be stolen. So on the whole, it's a really good thing. But there's also the money. I mean, all of that is good for patients, but there is this looming threat over everything as well. The government, it has fined several hospitals. I think what I've seen so far is it's totaled over $100 million in fines so far. And you know, that if you do the right thing, you don't end up in the news for the wrong reasons, which I'll show you a couple examples. But it just reduces, making sure your website is HIPAA compliant, just reduces your legal and financial risk. And of course, it makes your compliance department happy, so that you can do both, be compliant and do the marketing job that you need to do. So a couple of examples. Last year, a medium-sized hospital here in Illinois, the Christ Hospital in the middle of the state, had a lawsuit brought against them. So this was a class action lawsuit for having the metapixel on their website, but also sending data to other third parties. In the end, and this is an article that you can find easily on the web, they settled for 4.5 to 7 million. They didn't release the number, but through a few documents, we know it was at least 4.5 million, and it could have been up to $7 million settlement. And that is for the having the metapixel on their site and distributing information to other third parties, which we would assume is Google, at least Google. So the threat is real. I'll tell another story. I gave a presentation at ISHMPR, the Illinois Society of Healthcare Marketers and PR Professionals. And I gave a presentation very similar to the one you're going to see. And afterwards, two marketers came up to me and said, I wish we'd known about this a few months ago, because a lawyer, they were both marketers in small county hospitals, very small hospitals. And both of them had a lawsuit filed against them by a lawyer in that area who figured out that this was easy money. And he was offering them, his class action was, the class was one person suing in each county. That's it, one person. And he was demanding tens of thousands of dollars to have this go away. And that's, he advertised on Facebook trying to expand the class and couldn't get anybody to sign on because nobody wanted to bring down their only healthcare institution in their rural county. But all it takes is one attorney, and attorneys are figuring this out. They're unfortunately figuring it out. So that's why this is important. It's important for patients and patient privacy, but it's also just making sure your organization is protected. Okay, very quickly, some vocabulary, just to make sure we all have this common vocabulary. I'm pretty sure everybody on this call knows that HIPAA stands for Health Insurance Privacy and Accountability Act and what it does. And we're going to obviously talking a lot about HIPAA. Maybe a little ambiguous on PII, or personally identifiable information. So this is any information whatsoever that identifies an individual. So that can be an email address, obviously, and a physical address. It can be obviously their name, and there's been a lot in the news about our IP addresses, PII or PHI, which I'll get to next. And IP addresses are personal identifiable information. They are PII. And I'm just emphasizing that to kind of clear up that there's a difference between PII and PHI, and an IP address is PII. Okay, so this is anything that can be used to identify a person or even their location. Now, PHI, protected health information, is it's combining PII, anything that can identify an individual, with health information. Okay, so that IP address is by itself not a violation, but if it is combined with information on the page or the URL of the page that is healthcare related, then suddenly it becomes PHI, protected health information. So, your back-end systems, your health, medical history, all of that, of course, is PHI. But so is information in the URL of the website that gets passed to Google or gets passed to Meta. That is combined with the PII of the IP address and all kinds of other things we'll be talking about. Those two things combined make it PHI and a HIPAA violation. So that is the main focus of what we're doing, is making sure that no PII or PHI gets passed from your website to anybody. All right. Common things that you're going to be hearing: a pixel, JavaScript tracker, tag, they're all kind of the same thing. They're just pieces of code, usually JavaScript, that send information and data about what's going on a web page, who's visiting, how long they stayed, all of that. So you'll hear us call them cookies, pixel, JavaScript tracker, tags, all the same thing. Okay, now third-party cookies. Third-party cookies are a cookie is something that is a piece of code that is put onto a visitor's browser, right? So that, and it's used for tracking purposes. I think we probably all know this. But there are two kinds of cookies: third-party cookies and first-party cookies. Third-party cookies are cookies that your website sets on visitors' browsers that are not yours. So the obvious ones are Meta, Google, that if you have Google Analytics or Google Ads or Meta ads running, you more than likely are putting a cookie on visitors' browsers that is not yours. It's Meta's, it's Google's, okay? And third-party cookies are the problem. That is why people are getting sued. That's how they're breaking HIPAA. One of the ways that they're breaking HIPAA is by setting third-party cookies. And things you have to do is make sure to control these third-party cookies.
I just want to jump in and say, like, a third-party cookie, I mean, the cookies in general are, the main purpose behind them is to last an identifier across multiple sessions. So me as a user coming to a website that has Google Analytics installed on it, when I visit that website, Google Analytics sets their own cookie on my browser, and they are able to say, okay, that same person who viewed these 5 pages, maybe came to the site from said ad, in one month's time, they will be able to, if I return to that same website, they will know that I'm that same person who viewed 5 more pages, maybe filled out some sort of form. It's Google's, or any of these third parties' ability to track an individual user across multiple sessions.
Yeah. Okay. So third-party cookie, companies that are not you setting cookies on people browsing your website, and that's bad for HIPAA. Good for marketing, bad for HIPAA. Okay, a first-party cookie is very different. A first-party cookie is your organization putting a cookie on a visitor. That is perfectly fine, okay? That you are putting a cookie, your organization is putting a cookie on their browser. Why do you do that? Well, if you have logins, if you have a portal, and you want to recognize, that people don't have to put in their username and password every time, okay? That is what one of the main uses of a first-party cookie is, so that people log in once and they can stay logged in for a while. So first-party cookies, they're fine as long as it's restricted to your website, the originating website's domain.
It's sort of like a trust thing too, that on the web, I think when you visit a website, you inherently are, trusting that the people behind that website are able to collect and the data from you, and that they're doing things responsibly with that data. And when you have third-party cookies installed, you as the website owner and manager have given up control of who is seeing what and who is tracking who when they visit your website. So it's sort of the main difference between first and third-party cookies. And especially with third-party cookies, there's sort of like a large movement to block those. I mean, a lot of browsers nowadays, modern browsers, sometimes have defaults of blocking third-party cookies. Ad blockers plugins will block third-party cookies. So first-party cookies are sort of an extension of just a website, in that they are like a convenience for the website owner to improve their experience of their website.
Many aspects of websites would not work without first-party cookies. Okay, now the last one that is might be new is fingerprinting, and this is really important from a HIPAA perspective. Okay, and they are information that your web server collects when they send out web pages. Okay, and these pieces of information can be used to identify someone by combining multiple pieces of information. So if, in case you can't read this, if it's too small, around this fingerprint, some of the things that are collected whenever you go to a web page, the screen resolution of your screen is saved. What platform you're on? Are you on a Mac, PC, Linux? What are you on? What fonts do you have installed in your browser? What plugins do you have? The pixel ratio of your screen do you have an ad blocker on? What CPU are you using? What's the color depth of your monitor? What time zone are you in? And what is your screen resolution? All of those things are automatically detected by your web browser, your web server, and can be used to identify someone if you combined a lot of different information, including their IP address. All of those things can let very powerful companies like Google and Meta say, okay, based on all of this information, I'm pretty sure I know who this person is, and I know that they like swimming. Okay, so I'm going to show them swimming ads. Even though there's not a cookie involved, they still are able to identify people. And so fingerprinting is a big deal as far as HIPAA compliance goes. All those things have to be blocked. They cannot be sent to third parties. Okay, I'm sure everybody knows GA4, Google Analytics 4. That's what the #1 analytics application for marketers and web people responsible for websites use. We wanted to bring out, though, Google Tag Manager. We're seeing a lot of compliance offices requiring anything with the word Google on it get off the website. And we just wanted to say Google Tag Manager is completely HIPAA compliant. Okay, it breaks no rules whatsoever by itself. It's the code that gets put into Google Tag Manager that is breaking HIPAA. So it's a little bit of splitting hairs, but Google Tag Manager is not a problem with HIPAA. It's what gets put into Tag Manager.
And you can use Google Tag Manager in a completely HIPAA compliant way. You can put codes and scripts in there that don't violate HIPAA.
Okay. So that's our vocabulary. Now, what does HIPAA require of your websites? Okay. First thing we want to say is if you have an insanely simple website, if you just have an online brochure website that doesn't have anything, you don't have any third-party cookies, you can do a first-party cookie, you don't have, it just is giving information about your institution, you're perfectly fine. You're perfectly fine. The problem is if you collect, store, and transmit PHI or PII on your website. And most of the time, this is happening and people don't even know that they're doing it. Particularly for clinics and clinic groups, they may not be thinking about this. So for the vast majority of hospital and clinic websites, you have to worry about compliance. So what HIPAA requires you to do, okay, in very general terms, it makes you secure your technical infrastructure. So, you know, you have to use SSL, you have to have certified servers that are HIPAA compliant servers. A lot of you know you have to have an agreement with any vendor. It's called a BAA, or Business Associate Agreement. You have to have signed BAAs with any vendors so that they are sharing responsibility for the compliance of your information. You have to have data integrity, which means you have to have backups and prove that you have backups and that it's tamper-proof and data can't be altered. You have to have access controls so that not everybody in the organization can have access to patient information. And then I'm sure many of you know, you have to have policies around HIPAA, and you have to have training around HIPAA for anybody who has any access to PHI or PII. And I'm sure many of you have had to do these trainings. So that, in broad strokes, is what HIPAA requires of a website. So how do websites break HIPAA? Well, the most common four are using analytics tracking, which through that vocabulary, you know, we've already started talking about it, but analytics tracking is definitely the most prominent way that healthcare websites break HIPAA. But also a couple that a lot of people don't know is if you have embedded YouTube videos on any of your web pages, those send PHI and PII back to Google. And so you can't have embedded YouTube videos. Same with Google Maps, exact same reason. Sends PHI and PII back to Google. And then the other thing that often breaks HIPAA is their forms are not set up properly, don't have BAAs in place, and that data is not being secured properly. So we're going to talk about each one of these. Charlie is going to start off by talking about analytics tracking.
Yeah, and so, I mean, it's kind of mirroring the intro that Rod gave about all the different types of PII and PHI in the web world. When you install something like Google Analytics onto your site, just out of the box, you are breaking HIPAA because, one, Google's not going to sign you can't sign a BAA with Google. Same with Meta. You're not going to be able to sign BAAs with them. And the things that they collect by default constitute PHI, because I think the example that Rod gave earlier, which is just the most basic one, but it's just the most basic form of data that Google Analytics 4 is collecting is like page level data. And so when they collect your IP address, which they do, they are collecting an IP address that can be combined with a treatment page URL. So say you have a cancer treatment URL, or say a page title on your site has a treatment or a symptom inside of it. When that is combined with an IP address, that those two alone, such a simple piece of information, but when they're sent to Google, you don't have a BAA with them, and that is the violation right there. You're also sending plenty of fingerprinting data, which Rod was going over, to Google. So basically, you're in no control over all the information that you're sending to Google. And so that's sort of the major problem, which with any of these technologies, you have to have something in place to, if you're going to use them, have something in place to not just have an open fire hose of information going to them. Go ahead and click the next slide, please, Rod.
It's not going. There we go.
So, okay, what can you do to continue tracking anything on? How can you be compliant in an analytics world for your website? So, option one, which we have here as option 0, because basically you could have absolutely zero analytics. You could remove every single piece of tracking that you have on your website. Not really a solution, because especially for marketers, if you're running ads or campaigns, or you're basically flying blind entirely, and that you have no idea how your website's being used, what is working, what's not working. If you're running campaigns to your website, no idea how those are performing. So, for most marketers, this is not really an option. The other option here, which is a popular one, is cookieless analytics. So there's plenty of platforms out there that offer this, and they're great. They basically they do not set cookies on your browser. And so what these do are basically, they let you see how your website performs at a session level, because you're not tracking a user, you're not setting cookies on their browser. So you're not seeing, across multiple sessions what that user's doing. So you can see things like what pages are the most popular, what, is a form being submitted, what's a campaign that sent a user to my site, and what did they do from that campaign. But there's no what happened in the second, like a week later from that campaign. Was there any conversion that happened down the road? You're not going to be able to see that. But these do, they have a value to them for sure.
And I would just emphasize, if you use these, they are of very little help with marketing on social media platforms. Okay, you still have to fly blind on those platforms, pretty much all platforms.
If you're like,
any ads.
Yeah.
Yep. Cool. All right.
I see there's a question about Microsoft Clarity, which I can just pop in and answer that. So yes, Clarity is for sure sending plenty. It's the same amount of, it's even maybe more data than Google Analytics 4 is collecting. So Microsoft Clarity has its own giant host of issues with HIPAA compliance. So
if you are, don't use it until if you are a healthcare website, Clarity is a big problem.
Yeah. So, okay, there's an option 2, which is what, probably what we're going to talk the most about, is using some sort of server-side analytics to make an analytics platform or other analytic platforms HIPAA compliant. So typically when you go to a website, this is the usual flow. You'll browse a site, and we've talked about this, over and over here in this webinar, but questionable data, you're not in any control of what data is being sent to third parties. So Google Analytics 4, Meta, Google Ads, these platforms are collecting whatever data they want from the user browsing the site. What a server-side implementation of analytics tracking does is someone browses the site. You do not send anything to those third parties by default. Every piece of data is sent first to a server. And in our case, we have a server-side tagging system that we have that basically the server will collect that data, see it'll look through each piece of information that's sent with every event. So, there's the basics are IP addresses, user agents, browser information, all the fingerprinting data that Rod went over earlier. Sees that information, strips it out, because that's the information that we don't want Google or Meta or any third-party platform to have access to, and then sends that clean data to the third party, so that you can still use those third-party platforms, but in a HIPAA-compliant way, and that they aren't receiving things that are, they're not receiving PII, PHI, or any sort of user identifiers. So these are kind of like the three umbrella benefits of a system like this. So one, essentially makes GA4 equivalent to those cookieless platforms. So it is not tracking you. GA4 will not be able to track a user across multiple sessions. It will turn GA4 into basically a session-based attribution reporter. So you can see GA4. You can still use all the bells and whistles and tools and filtering that GA4 has, that a lot of people are accustomed to and has a lot of power behind it. Especially compared with something like Plausible. I know GA4 has a lot more reporting features built into it. So you can still use GA4 as you would normally, but it is turned into sort of a cookieless version that basically won't break HIPAA and still let you use GA4. But the giant benefit on top of what Plausible and Matomo and Piwik offer with their cookieless options is that you can also run ads from Google Ads or Meta Ads, those third-party ad platforms. We're able to, from the server, send conversions back to those platforms. Basically, you're able to, when you're running an ad campaign from Google Ads, you're not going to be flying blind anymore, and you're going to actually have an idea of which campaigns are leading to which conversions. And with things like automated bidding and the optimization of your ad campaigns is basically goes from 0 to a possibility. And the final one here is that if you're able to set a first-party cookie, so you are in control of a user identifier. And so outside of GA4, like right now, by default, outside of the healthcare world, GA4 typically would be used to say, okay, this user's lifetime, like how many sessions have they had? How long have they been a visitor of our website? How many conversions in their life have they done on our website? In a HIPAA sense, you cannot give GA4 a user identifier that lasts like that. So what we can do is use our first party cookie to say, okay, if we have a database set up, we can send lifetime data for a user that you have full ownership and control over. So you could say, this user from this ad campaign in 2 months' time came back to our website, filled out a form, and then in 3 months' time filled out another form. And maybe they clicked another ad. So you'll have an idea of, outside of Google Analytics, in a database that you own or have a BAA with, have access to sort of a CDP, a customer data platform of what is this user's lifetime experience with our brand and our website.
Cool. So you have options on the server-side analytics option. Okay, option B. The three that are out there, we are one of them, Pilot, but there are two other really, really good solutions out there: Ours Privacy and Fresh Paint. And if you are in the healthcare world, you've probably certainly heard of Fresh Paint and probably Ours Privacy. Now, I wrote a blog post comparing and contrasting our solution to Ours Privacy and Fresh Paint. And if you are considering either of those options, I would encourage you to go take a look at our blog and find a blog post that I think the title is something like, "Is Pilot an alternative, a viable alternative to Ours and Fresh Paint?" There is a big difference, though, between how we do this and how Ours and Fresh Paint do this. Oh, I will also say the CEO of Ours wrote to me and said that he really enjoyed my article and thought I was being very, very fair, that I wasn't running them down, because they do a great job. The problem with them is they do a great job mainly for enterprise hospitals. They only work with the big hospital in the country. Ours will go down to a middle-sized hospital, but Fresh Paint at this point won't. And that's why we had to get into this game, is because most of our clients can't afford ours and Fresh Paint. The other big difference is that ours and Fresh Paint they're both software companies, and they've created a piece of software that you as an organization have to set up and manage. And another trigger for us on that, we had to develop our own solution, was a very large healthcare organization came to us and said, we bought Fresh Paint and we can't figure out how to get it up and working. Okay, we paid tens of thousands of dollars and we still don't know how to make it work. And Charlie spent 3 months setting up their Fresh Paint for them because they couldn't do it themselves. And this is a huge organization with an analytics department. So they provide you a platform to become HIPAA compliant, but you have to do all the work. Pilot, on the other hand, because we're servicing smaller companies, we do the work. We do everything. We provide a service. We don't provide a software platform for you to use. We take care of everything. We set up everything and work with you on an ongoing basis. So that's the difference. And I want to emphasize, we're not putting ours and Fresh Paint down. They do a great job. They really do a great job, but they are not a good fit for everybody. I've never met anybody who is paying less than $60,000 a year for Fresh Paint. They say they start at $35,000, but I've never met anybody who is in for less than $60,000 a year. Okay, so that's analytics. That's the first of 4 things that usually break HIPAA on websites. The other 3 are quite a bit simpler to talk about. YouTube. If you have an embedded YouTube video on a healthcare website, you're violating HIPAA, because just by loading that video, and even if they don't click play, just by the page loading, PHI and PII is being sent back to Google, and that violates HIPAA. So it's just really, really simple. You can't do it. So there's a lot of solutions. If you don't have a lot of videos, you can self-host the videos just right inside your website. You just host them on your website instead of using YouTube. If your website is on WordPress, there's a couple of really easy plugins that let you host the videos on your web server. Jetpack and Presto are 2 that just make it easy to do it yourself. If you have a lot of videos, it's going to change your hosting platform, or your hosting environment. You're probably going to have to up your hosting environment, and your hosting environment needs to be, you need to have a BAA with your hosting company, but you can do that. If you're not on WordPress, I would encourage you to just talk with whoever built your website and say, hey, we've got 2 videos on our website that are being embedded by YouTube and we need to get rid of them. Give me a solution so that we can host them ourselves. Okay, and they'll have a solution. The other thing you can do is you can set up your own cloud-based system that both Amazon Web Services, AWS, and Akamai, both of them will sign BAA agreements for hosting. And so you can do this yourself. Other solutions, there's us and ours and Fresh Paint all have a solution for this. And there's also Vimeo Enterprise, that if you pay Vimeo a fee, and it's not an unsubstantial fee, but pay them a fee, you can upgrade and they will sign a BAA with you so that you can use Vimeo to serve HIPAA compliant videos. Ours and Fresh Paint and us, Pilot, have developed systems that basically replace YouTube for your website. That We're not saying get rid of your YouTube channel. Okay, your YouTube channel is perfectly fine, and you should continue to use your YouTube channel for marketing, and you can even send people directly there for educational videos and things. You just cannot embed them into your website. And our solution, and ours and Fresh Paint, we basically provide you a YouTube-like experience that you upload your videos to it, and then you embed from our platform. And then you're not violating HIPAA, because everything that we've set up is all HIPAA compliant. It's on a HIPAA compliant server. And all of these solutions will send the right sized video. If they're on a phone or on a desktop, it'll send the right sized video with the right resolution to the platform. And I don't know about what ours and Fresh Paint use, but we use Akamai, which is the largest content delivery network in the world. So it's just super, super fast, no different than YouTube.
Someone asked, what about linking to a video rather than embedding it in the page?
Yep, that's fine. Good question. Very good question. If you just say click here and take them to YouTube, you're fine. That is HIPAA compliant. Absolutely. Very good question. And that's going to be applicable to our next one. Okay. All right, YouTube. So yeah, if you have embedded YouTube videos, you've got a problem. Next one is embedded Google Maps, and that should say embedded Google Maps. And if you were to use Bing Maps, it would be the same, or Apple Maps. They all do the same thing. And it's the exact same as the video. Anytime that you load a page with a Google map on it, it sends PHI back to, and PII back to Google, and violates HIPAA. So lots of fingerprinting data is sent. You don't have any control over what's sent to them, so that breaks HIPAA. So solutions. I need to update this this slide, because one solution is you can use openstreetmaps.org to embed a OpenStreetMaps map onto your website, and there's an application called Leaflet that lets you do that fairly simply. But there are some issues with that. You have to, OpenStreetMaps will not sign a BAA. So you have to download and serve all of the map, they call them plates. These maps are made up of thousands and thousands of basically square little maps sewn together. And you have to host those yourself. And we were hearing, well, this is way too difficult for us. So we've done this for our clients. And so now we have a solution that uses OpenStreetMap and Leaflet, and we host the plates on a HIPAA compliant server to provide an interactive map system. And for clinic groups and hospitals that have multiple locations, we can have the same thing with all the different pins of all the different locations. And you can click on the pin and get the details and a picture of the front of the building and all of those things. And you can filter and say, I'm only interested if they have a lab, or if they have, if they're accepting patients now. So we have a solution for this as well. And so does ours and Fresh Paint.
If we have several clients, if one of our clients left, would the videos/maps then not be linked on their site?
So Nikki, I'm guessing that, so you're an agency, I'm guessing. And yeah, the agreement okay, so we would be doing one thing. If you're an agency, one thing to understand is that we cannot white label this. We can't white label it because we have to sign a BAA agreement, and our insurance will not allow us to sign a BAA with your agency and then your agency sign a BAA with the client, because then we can't control what stupid things you might do and get us in trouble. So we have to have a relationship with the client. So if the client were to leave your agency, they would still have a relationship with us and the solutions that we provide. Okay, cool.
One other question from Mark about what about embedded Google Street Map images that don't include the whole
Good.
interact?
Thank you. Great question, Mark. Completely HIPAA compliant. So that's a solution. And I think, do I have it? Yeah. It's my next slide. Is if you don't need an interactive map on the website, you can just put a screenshot of the map on your site and make that clickable, so that if they click on the map, it takes them to Google Maps and they're no longer on your website, and everything is fine because you're not combining PHI and PII. Once they get to Google, there's no health information. It's just a map solution. So it's perfectly HIPAA compliant. Okay, so that's the simple solution. Is if you do not need an interactive map solution, just take a screenshot. Okay, and you can, in that link, you can make it so that the driving instructions just pop up and say, you know, when they click on this, their location to us, give them driving directions. And it's easily done, easily done. Cool, great question. Last one is forms, and forms is pretty complicated. So basically, you have to be able to control what's going on with the data that forms are taking in. You have to be able to control all of that data, and anywhere that data is being saved. So on your web server, for example, you have to have a BAA agreement with where that data is being saved. So forms present problems. Now, a lot of healthcare institutions have backend systems that provide forms. Okay, that you have, most of them will have a BAA with the backend system, and that backend system will have its own form solution, so that any data that is collected by the website goes into a HIPAA compliant, BAA certified backend system, and that is perfectly fine. But let's just say you have just a WordPress website and you're using one of, Gravity Forms or Contact Form 7 or any of the normal form plugins for WordPress. That's not HIPAA compliant at all. Now, one of the things that you can, it's a little tricky, but if you don't have BAA agreements, one thing you can do is make sure to not ask any health-related questions on the form. Don't ask, why do you want to meet with us, and have a list of your services or your service lines. Just say, okay, you want to contact us, give us your name, and we will contact information, and we will get back to you. But there can be no health information on this page. So if your domain is XYZ Ortho Clinic, this won't work, because you're passing that domain back, and that you're an orthopedic clinic, or you're.
I would say just think of it as like you are the person who owns the database that gets these form submissions. If I could infer that if I'm getting first name, last name, email, as well as, because the URL will be passed, as well as orthoclinic.com, you can imagine why that's a violation, because I suddenly have access to names and emails and phone numbers, and I know that they are interested in this type of clinic. But if you just, if you had a larger service set and it was just a hospital and those names and emails, that I can't infer necessarily health and information from that. But if they did have a question/comment field like Rod has here, you open an open text field opens the door for that person to put anything they want in there and say, my back is killing.
Yeah. And I think I need a hip replacement.
You're right.
Boom.
So as the database sees a list of a name and an email and what's wrong with them. And so that's where you have problems.
Okay. So forms, we don't offer a form solution. Ours and Fresh Paint do. We don't, because there are a lot of options out there. So the big one is jot forms. You can get a BAA signed with jot forms, and then there's multiple others. I just listed 3 more here, but there are, I think, at least 10 different form companies out there that will sign a BAA agreement, and you can have HIPAA compliant forms, and then you can usually tie those forms into your backend system so that they auto-populate. So we don't offer a solution there. We basically just say, we will consult with you and we'll fix the problem. All right, so we're pretty much on time. We got 7 minutes left. Now you can just open up your mics and ask questions if you would like, but we'd be happy to answer any questions while you're figuring out if you have a question or how to ask it. I will say, if you are an agency, because Nikki said she's from an agency, we will say that ours and Fresh Paint and us, Pilot, offer a referral payment to agencies who bring their clients to us. And yeah, we definitely take care of the agencies that work with us. The other thing is, I guess we can just kind of make an announcement that we are based on a different company, because a lot of agencies don't want to, they're a little nervous about introducing a digital marketing agency to their clients. So we're kind of spinning this off into another company so that you don't have to work. Even if you signed an agreement with Pilot, we aren't interested in taking your business away from you. We want to help you make sure your clients are in good shape, and we won't be trying to sell them on our other services. Okay. So any other questions? You'll get to stand by. We're going to be having a brand launch here pretty soon with a new website and a new brand that we're very excited about. All right. Great, Nikki. I'm glad it was helpful. Any other questions? I would be interested in hearing if for those of you attending, if this was too much. You know, was it too technical? Was it okay? Was it understandable? We'd love to get that kind of feedback from you on, you know, I didn't understand much of this, or it was like, of course, this was easy. We'd love to get that feedback as well. All right.
I'll just jump in real quick. Coming from the digital marketing experience, I didn't feel that it was over technical at all. I completely understood what you guys were saying, and I really appreciate the way that you came across with everything, with the problems and the solutions. No, it was a great training. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. I'm glad it was useful. Let's see. Michael says, what about very small groups like FQHCs? Michael, is your question, are they required to be HIPAA compliant? Is that the question?
Actually, the question is, obviously an FQHC has very limited resources, and
yeah.
And oftentimes use cookie cutter type websites. And are not anywhere near a $35,000 to $60,000 investment.
Yeah, honestly, that's a very, very good question. For those of you who don't know what an FQHC is, it's a federally qualified health center. So they're community-based. They're nonprofits, and they're vital to communities that they're in. And that's one of the reasons we got into this, is because our clients couldn't afford Fresh Paint. Our clients couldn't afford Hours Privacy. And both of those, as I said, those are both software startup companies. And both of them have taken tens of millions of dollars in investor funds. And that's why their prices are what they are, is they have to pay back tens of millions of dollars. We went into this trying to find a solution for our small clients, small hospitals and individual clinics and clinic groups, dentists and things, so that they could afford to be HIPAA compliant and continue to use marketing services. So our prices are a fraction of the cost of the others. Like our analytics solution is a little over $900 a month. And to an FQHC, that, you know, that might not be a small amount of money, but that is, we are required to carry a whole lot of insurance because we signed BAA agreements. And so we do have overhead, but we're still, you know, $11,000 a year instead of $60,000 a year. So we're far less expensive.